Let's now start with our top story, which takes us to Switzerland, where the annual World Economic Forum Summit has kicked off in Davos. The four-day annual gathering is being held under the shadow of the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Over 3,000 people from 117 countries will gather in the ski town of the Swiss Alps. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, US President Donald Trump, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel are among 53 heads of state attending the forum. A meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Imran Khan is scheduled on the sidelines of the summit. Prime Minister Khan has left for the summit. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and other officials are accompanying the Prime Minister. The summit will host over 150 sessions that will be open to public attendance. Since 1971, Davos Summit have been a mirror of major world events of their time, from the fall of Berlin Wall to the rise of economic globalization.
Let's discuss that summit a bit further. We're joined now by Professor Steve Keen, who is an economic expert based in Amsterdam. Steve, thank you for your time today. And now it seems that the U.S.-Iran conflict as well as climate change may dominate this year's gathering in Davos. What other issues do you think will dominate this conference?
Well, I think those are basically the two. But climate change has become very much more obvious, even to people who are deniers, or even them changing their tune. That has to be a major focus. And then I think the trouble's been caused by America's militarization of the dollar is another one. That can't be discussed openly, but I hope there's a fair bit of discussion about the need to build an alternative global payment system.
And then a report yesterday, Steve, suggests the richest 1% now own as much wealth as the poorest 90% plus around the world. What can this gathering in Davos do, if anything, to ensure that this doesn't continue to damage the world economy?
Well, they've actually helped reach that situation. They are, of course, not just the 1%, they're the 0.01% going to Davos. And they benefit from this inequality. So I think anything they do or talk about doing for it will be lip service rather than effectual change. We have had a period of inequality caused by the private debt bubble that caused the financial crisis. That's been followed by central banks exacerbating inequality by driving up share prices through QE, which of course only benefits those who own shares, which again are the wealthy. So everything has been about maintaining the financial system, the financial sector, and that maintains the wealth of the ultra wealthy. I don't think there's anything coming out of Davos which is likely to reverse that.
And then finally, we've had populist leaders, haven't we, who have railed against globalization, and they're in power around the world, and they seem to be growing. Can we really expect then anything positive to come out of a gathering like Davos, which is so based on globalization?
Yeah, I mean, globalization has had all sorts of manifestations. One of the main ones being relocating production to third world countries within the same company, and then exporting the goods back for sale in the wealthy countries, which of course undermines the workers who used to work in those factories, which got shut down. And what it also involves is an enormous amount of international shipping. Now, that is all unwinding for two reasons. The poor in the West have had enough. Their wages have been cut so badly that they now are demonstrating, as we're seeing in France against Macron and the election of Trump himself. All this populism is by people who've been disenfranchised in the OECD. And when globalization is so dependent upon transportation, and we have the shipping ships are absolutely not set up to reduce carbon emission levels, I think we're going to find globalization going into reverse, and that will be regardless of what the Davos people want, whose wealth has actually come out of that globalization, as you say.
Very well, Steve. We'll leave that, but of course, we appreciate you taking your time out to share your insight with us here at Indus News. That was Steve Keen, who was speaking to us from Amsterdam. Let's move on with the news now. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says Iranians' resistance and refusal to submit to America's bullying angers Washington. He said the world is fascinated by Iran's resolve, and it should be used to spread the truth about Islam and the Iranian nation. Speaking to an event, he said the U.S. actually wants Iran to abandon its new message for the world when it asks Tehran to behave normally. The new chief of Iran's Quds Force has promised manly revenge for the U.S. killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani. At an event, Brigadier General Ismail Qani said the U.S. killed Soleimani in a cowardly fashion in Iraq. Also, Iran's Civil Aviation Authority has confirmed 2 missiles were fired at the Ukrainian airliner shot down earlier this month. The Ukraine International Airlines plane was destroyed shortly after takeoff in Tehran, killing all 176 on board. In a statement, the Aviation Authority said investigators discovered 2 Tor M1 missiles were fired at the aircraft. It said an investigation is continuing to assess the effect their impact had on the event. The Tor M1 is a short-range surface-to-air missile developed in the former Soviet Union and is designed to target aircraft or cruise missiles. Responding to U.S. accusations that Iran is violating UN standards, Russia says the statements are no more than myth-making and fact-twisting. The U.S. Special Representative for Iran, Brian Hook, had said UN standards prohibit Iran from nuclear enrichment. In a statement, the Russian Foreign Ministry said Hook's comments accused the UN Security Council of passing resolutions counter to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The ministry said the treaty grants all signatory nations an equal right to peaceful use of nuclear energy. It said Russia rejects the attempts to present the U.S. national approach and requirements as an international standard. Meanwhile, 3 rockets have hit Baghdad's Green Zone, home to government buildings and foreign missions. No injuries or casualties have been reported so far. Police say the rockets, 2 of which landed near the U.S. Embassy, were launched from the Zafaraniya district, outside Baghdad. A U.S. military spokesman in the city said they heard the blasts at the military and embassy compound areas. The U.S. blames Iranian-backed paramilitary groups for a spate of similar attacks on the Green Zone in recent months. Tehran, though, has not claimed responsibility. Moving on, the Taliban have said peace talks with the U.S. in Qatar's capital Doha will continue today. Both sides are engaged in a fresh round of talks to end the 19-year war and allow U.S. forces to leave Afghanistan. The group's spokesperson, Sohail Shaheen, said U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad and General Scott Miller represent Washington. Shaheen said Taliban leaders Mullah Baradar, Abbas Stanagzai, and Maulavi Amir Khan are negotiating with U.S. representatives. He said both sides are expected to hold a joint meeting in Doha today to discuss further steps regarding the peace deal. In Indian-occupied Kashmir, occupation forces have martyred 2 more Kashmiris in the Pulwama district. The civilians were targeted during a cordon and search operation by Indian paramilitary forces in the Awanitpura area of the district. Occupation forces have martyred 12 civilians in January so far, while 5 have been targeted over the past 24 hours. The lockdown and communications blackout of the occupied valley by India have entered the 170th day. Enraged by bribery allegations, female protesters in the Indian capital Delhi have sent a defamation notice to the ruling party. The Bharatiya Janata Party's IT cell earlier alleged anti-citizenship law demonstrators are taking 500 rupees per day to attend the Shaheen Bagh sit-in. In the notice, protesters said the head of the BJP's IT cell, Amit Malviya, has a vested interest, in defaming the demonstrators. They said through these allegations, Malviya has not only misled the public, but also brought disrepute upon the demonstrators. Meanwhile, Indian police have arrested 16 women for protesting against the controversial Citizenship Act. The Indian government has been facing countrywide protests against the new law for over a month, killing 27 people. The Myanmar-appointed panel has claimed no genocide was conducted against Rohingya Muslims in 2017. Almost 750,000 Rohingya fled Rakhine State to Bangladesh after thousands were massacred by the army. The government set up what it called the Independent Commission of Inquiry that concluded the acts of its army as war crimes, not genocide. In a report, the commission said there is insufficient evidence of crimes committed to destroy a national, ethnic, or religious group. The Burmese Rohingya organization UK has rejected that report, saying it is a blatant PR exercise to divert attention from the ruling of the International Court of Justice. The report has been released ahead of the ICJ's ruling tomorrow on whether to impose urgent measures to stop the alleged ongoing genocide in Myanmar. The World Health Organization says the gathering will decide if outburst is a global public health emergency. The UN's health body has called an emergency meeting for the fatal new coronavirus spreading rapidly through Southeast Asia. In a statement, the WHO said its Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, will lead tomorrow's meeting under international health regulations. The new mystery virus has spread rapidly in China, killing 4 people and infecting over 300 others in just 3 days. There is currently no vaccine for the virus. The infection was first identified in December by Chinese health officials in Wuhan. South Korea, meanwhile, says it will send troops to the Strait of Hormuz with its anti-piracy unit now covering a larger area to help protect the waterway. Washington had asked Seoul and other allies to join its naval coalition to secure the strait amid tensions with Tehran. The Korean Defense Ministry statement, however, has said the force will not join the U.S.-led coalition, but will conduct its operations independently. It said the government has decided to temporarily expand the Cheonghae unit's sphere of activity. The ministry said the step has been taken to guarantee the safety of its people and the freedom of navigation for shipping. Time now for our first break. Don't go anywhere, though. I'll be back with plenty more news right after. Let's begin this segment in the UK, where the government's Brexit bill has defeated in the House of Lords. The upper chamber of Parliament voted in favour of a move to give EU nationals an automatic right to live in the UK after Brexit. Earlier this month, the Brexit bill was presented in the upper house after being passed by the House of Commons without amendment. Prime Minister Boris Johnson enjoys a commanding majority in the lower house after his recent election victory. However, Conservatives do not have a majority in the upper house. Any changes to the bill made by the Lords have to go back to the Commons to be approved and could still be overturned. Well, the United States has promised more action to support Venezuela's opposition leader Juan Guaido. During a regional anti-terrorism summit in Bogota, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Venezuela has become a failed state under President Nicolás Maduro. Pompeo also praised Colombia's President Ivan Duque for supporting Venezuelans who reject authoritarianism and demand freedom. Guaido defied a travel ban to travel to Colombia and plans to visit Brussels and then Davos to attend the World Economic Forum. Meanwhile, President Maduro has accused Washington of waging psychological warfare on Venezuela.
Mike Pompeo declares that he's ready now, so you can see what Mike Pompeo's mind is. He's a phony who deceives himself, cheats, who lives from psychological warfare, who lives from falsehood, from lies.
Well, Venezuela's military continues to stand by the ruling Socialist Party despite crushing U.S. sanctions and intensifying economic and humanitarian crises. On to Chad now, where the French defense minister has met with her Chadian counterpart in the capital city, N'Djamena, to discuss a new Sahel military coalition. French Defense Minister Florence Parly is on a 2-day visit to the Sahel region. Chad's Defense Minister Mohamed Abali Salah said they spoke of the technicalities for Chadian troops to operate outside their border. After the meeting, Parly said Chad's President Idriss Déby is committed to sending a battalion to the 3-border region.
Indeed, this international coalition is a turning point because it will focus its efforts on the most critical area at the moment in the fight against terrorism, which is the 3-border region, with the new joint command that will bring together Operation Barkhane's command, G5 Sahel's command, and the leadership of the Sahelian armies.
Well, during last week's PAL summit, French President Emmanuel Macron and his G5 Sahel counterpart said they would form a military coalition under one command. Now, in news coming out of Tunisia, President Kais Saied has named Elias Fakhfakh as the country's new prime minister. He now has a month to form a coalition and win a vote of confidence in parliament by a simple majority. There will be another election with urgent economic decisions hanging over the country if he fails. Earlier this month, Parliament rejected ex-Prime Minister Habib Gemli's proposed government in a confidence vote. Gemli had been nominated by the Ennahda party, which won last October's polls, but not a parliamentary majority. Tunisia has been in a state of turmoil since dictator Zain al-Abidine Ben Ali's regime was overthrown in 2011. Ten people have died in Ethiopia after a seating area collapsed during a major Orthodox Christian celebration. Health officials said over 100 people were injured by the accident in the historic city of Gondar. The casualties occurred as spectator stands suddenly gave way at Facilities Bath. Hundreds had been sitting on a tiered wooden structure for hours when it collapsed. Officials warned the death toll could rise because an unknown number of people were crushed. Millions of people gather in Gondar for the Epiphany festivities, known as Timkat. 9 people have been killed by a suicide bomber in the western Chad village of Kaiga Kinjiria. The military says 2 others were wounded when a woman blew herself up. Officials said the Boko Haram militant group is behind the deadly attack. Chad is one of the countries struggling with Boko Haram attacks that have spilled over from Nigeria's decade-long violence. Many of the group's fighters are believed to have sought refuge in the Lake Chad region, launching attacks into Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. In Australia, meanwhile, poor air quality caused by smoke from bushfires has led to unsustainable working conditions. The mining giant BHP Group says its operations have been slowed by reduced visibility at energy coal plants in New South Wales.
The company produced 9% less energy coal during the December quarter than in the same period during 2018. It said the wildfires could hold back the production of coal throughout the second half of the financial year. The warning from the world's biggest miner highlights the economic damage due to Canberra by the wildfires. Australia's tourism and insurance industries are expecting losses of $687 million each. For their part, officials say the hazardous fire conditions will return within days. The fires have killed 29 people, hundreds of millions of animals, and destroyed over 2,500 homes since September.
In Sri Lanka, thousands of people have gathered in Colombo to set a world record for the largest gathering of twins. Now, because of the huge turnout, organizers could not meet the Guinness World Records guidelines. More now about the twin gathering in this report.
Thousands of twin pairs waited in a long registration queue, snaking around the arena as their birth certificates were checked, while many posted for photographs. The event managers hope to break Taiwan's world record set in 1999 with 3,961 pair of twins. The organizers set a target of 5,000 pairs. But to their surprise, a bigger than expected crowd flocked in, leading to no group photo officially required to break the record.
While the counting is still going on, we have counted 12,492. The counting is still going on. We will submit the final count and the documentation back to the Guinness World Record Committee.
Sri Lankan Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was also there. Many twins had travelled for hours to take part.
We think bringing twins from around the country and having an event like this is a good thing. This is a totally different experience, really. When we see so many twins, it is a very pleasant experience.
It will take 2 weeks to find out if this attempt qualifies as a record or not. The organizers say next time they will be ready with a more systematic event.
The stock markets across Europe are trading lower after the IMF further slashed global growth predictions. The CAC 40 in Paris is trading over 1% lower. London's FTSE 100 has lost nearly 1% as Burberry stocks slipped nearly 4%. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 0.5% despite Hugo Boss shares gaining 3.5%. In Asia, Hong Kong's Hang Seng led the losses, closing nearly 3% lower after ratings agency Moody's slashed its rating for the city. The Shanghai Composite, Seoul's Kospi, and Nikkei 225 lost ground. Meanwhile, international oil prices have lost 1% after supply risks fade. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And with that, you're all caught up. Thank you for watching this bulletin here at Indus News.